Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 18th TC Roundtable podcast. I'm your host, Artesians. Unfortunately, we're not joined by our full roster today since Azel and Zajif are either feeling down because of a vaccine shot or they're busy. Today we'll be filling in with XF3, otherwise it would literally just be me and Tenten. But yeah, a little bit about myself. I'm the head of Theorycrafting at KeqingMains. I run the administrative side of Theorycrafting. Just a reminder, I don't speak for all Theorycrafters in KeqingMains. Certainly I don't represent like any majority positions or anything, but at least administratively, I'm at the top. And today we're joined by our normal host, Tenten. Would you like to say something, Tenten?
No.
Okay. Tenten is a YouTuber, Twitch streamer for Genshin Impact that is pretty focused on evaluating value for pools. And then XF3, he's one of my Theorycrafting staff, and he's known mostly for his Kokomi guide, his Yaimika guide, and I suppose soon he'll be working on Nilou as well. You have anything else to say, XF3?
Follow me on Twitter. I don't post updates in Discord because it's too much. But I post updates on TC stuff on Twitter.
Okay. And then today's special guest is Sevy.
Hello.
Sevy is another Genshin content creator that is that kind of does a little bit of both. A lot of abyss clearing videos and a lot of videos that help people out with some theory crafting in it.
Yes.
So, yeah, so let's just get started. Sevy, you're super active on Twitter and you have a really high post volume on YouTube. You have like 2, 3, 4 videos every week. How do you keep up?
Oh boy. Well, on YouTube, well, first of all, I have an editor, so that helps a lot. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how quote unquote keep up, but I guess one part of it is that this is my full-time job. I don't have another job. I'm like fresh out of university, and I started the channel like a year before graduating. So when I finished my classes, the channel was already at a good size. So I was like, you know what? I don't need to get a job. I'm doing okay. So yeah, it's kind of like when there's a lot to make, it can go up to like 4 videos a week, especially on weeks when there's like a banner drop. Like those don't take too much time to make. Those usually take a couple hours, but then, you know, sometimes there are weeks when there isn't a lot of other content to make. So I have more time to make more in-depth stuff. I think it's really about pacing, or like choosing when is the best time to make a video, if it takes really long or if I know it's not going to take that long. And then you brought up Twitter, which is kind of funny.
I saw a while ago that you were having a fight on Twitter with some people in your community talking about like meta in your videos or something like that.
Oh, I'm not sure if it's like a fight per se, but
well, it's like a Twitter quote unquote fight.
Oh yeah,
I just fight everyone. Pogger.
Tenten was swinging left, right, and center earlier this week. So,
I mean, actually, like in contrast to a lot of Tenten, Zajif, and Brax, even like you guys often tweet a bunch about like meta community and things like that. I mean, I'm obviously it's not a bad thing. Like it's your Twitter, like do whatever. I actually try to not. Yeah.
No, I can see that. Like it's pretty. I'm thinking about like if it's the right thing to do, but I'm like it's pretty funny. So.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, one of my goals is to not get into a fight or to not cause drama, because honestly, that's like I feel like that's one of the things that's just going to drain you mentally and emotionally. And I think that when people do start replying, honestly, when people start replying to some tweet I do and then they start replying like totally out of context or pulling it out of context, I usually just mute them unless it's like a friend, I guess. I think the last time that someone tried to have a conflict with me on Twitter. Well, they didn't try, but the last time I had a conflict on Twitter was when someone accused me of copying their thumbnail, which was
Oh,
honestly,
I saw that one.
I saw that
yeah,
as well.
I saw that one.
yeah, that was really funny because there was very little basis for it. Like, I get why the layout looked similar, but it was kind of a moot point at the end of the day. So yeah.
I mean, there's like a certain formula to it, so I feel like it's
There's a
pretty
certain
easy to
formula,
run.
it's pretty
yeah,
easy.
you just run into people like running similar thumbnails because it just works. But
Yeah, it does. And there's really like a visual layout that does work for everything, like balancing it and shit. And I understood where that YouTube channel was coming from because um they were definitely a smaller creator, and I actually felt something similar when I was a smaller channel because when I was like in my baby channel days, I tried to make a video that kind of had some DPS comparisons, and then I accidentally made a video that was very similar to what I Win to Lose would release like a couple hours later. And I was very afraid that someone would accuse me of copying. But I didn't accuse I Win to Lose. I actually sent him an email and I was like, dude, I don't know if this is gonna concern you, but I accidentally made like a similar video. I don't know if anyone's going to accuse us or whatever. So I was like very nice about it. And then he just replied to the email. He was like, oh, thank you for contacting me. This is completely fine. If anyone like wants to look more into this, like I'll direct them to your video or whatever. So it was a very nice exchange. There was I'm very careful in the sense that I try not to start drama at all. Like I actively avoid it.
I don't know if you know, but like I feel like at least Zajif and Azel don't mind going after people when they're wrong, especially like when
Oh,
like,
Sada for sure, dude. I just
Oh,
don't
I
care
can tell.
when it comes to like educational content in Genshin, I think the stakes are higher for them. Like they feel that it's higher, or it's important to have accurate information. So yeah, I mean, hey, it's good content for me. I like opening up Twitter and having Zaja fucking beat down a bunch of people about like random stuff all the time. But
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was you on Twitter or not, but was it you that had a Twitter thread or something about making content that you liked, like specifically about meta?
Oh, I think I may have done something like that because
Mm-hmm.
well, when they were like no end game, no combat end game, I also did have that moment like most of you guys and most of the content creators, like most of the guide channels that are like, well, what the fuck are our guides for if there's not going to be like that end game, that side grade or upgrade to abyss, whatever we were hoping it to be. And at this point, because right now, like I am still invested in the new characters and kits and meta stuff, but I'm also actually really invested in the story. And I think it's kind of a testament to how much the writing has improved that I'm seeing more and more interest lore wise. So I think that um the nice thing about Genshin is that since it's kind of leveling up in other aspects, at least there's more content there. Like it's not necessarily the content we want. Edge. I see Edge.
Okay, they just need a sub.
Did you guys know that there's now like a preview above the chat box of when there's an ad, like there's a preview of the stream.
There has always been a preview.
Has it?
Yeah.
they
I didn't
It's
know.
only- It's
What
only
they can
mid-roll,
see
it's
right
only
now
mid-roll.
is nothing. It's literally just my computer background. It's just Yo and me at Glee. Oh, now it's Noel.
I didn't
Have
know
fun.
that was a thing. Okay. Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I know Brax has struggled with kind of audience targeting. And I know KQM was also kind of in a rough spot for like a microsecond there, like, excuse me, but what the fuck are we actually doing here now? And then, you know, we just figured, yeah, we'll just keep doing what we're doing.
I do feel for Brax and his audience targeting struggle. I think that it's very difficult when you, like, as a creator, it's very difficult when you're not sure who your audience is because the thing is, like, it's difficult to go by comments because the comments are always going to be the most vocal ones and you can't tell if it's the majority or the minority. And on my end, like, I recently started making mini guide. They're not necessarily full guides, but like mini meta related tidbits in the form of shorts. And when those started popping off, they started getting picked up by very casual players. And I could tell because they sounded like they had not seen any of my long forms before. They were asking relatively they were asking advice on relatively simple stuff. You know, of course, not to put, whether they're new players or very casual players, not to put them down, of course. But then it became very obvious that, like, okay, there's definitely a new reach towards less meta players, and then that kind of became consistent for a few weeks. And with that, I actually made the decision to make my guides lean a little more new player friendly, a little more casual friendly, because I guess even after the whole endgame shit came out, it also became clear just how many people either didn't care or didn't mind or just played slightly differently. So yeah, it's kind of weird whether it's like an audience shift towards your channel or your audience or your demographic, or I don't know, like sometimes I'm like, am I getting a clearer sample distribution of the actual player base now? Honestly, it's hard to tell.
It's very, very hard. I think KQM, Tenten, like we talked about this like a few years ago or something like that. Like we knew like implicitly like our content was extremely niche. Even now we know that like our content has definitely reached out to people. Like people know what kind of elemental gauge theory is. Like they know like it's nerd shit. They know what ICD is. They know like kinda. And for sure, like things have leaked over, but it's still very separate. The Theorycrafting community and people who are pretty focused on DPS is very noticeably different than like the wider Genshin community. I think it's even more clear now than it has ever been. Since like if you go back in time and think about like how unpopular the combat events were at the time, it kind of makes sense. But
do you think that like over the years you have drawn or converted more casual players into more meta players, or do you think they've just discovered you?
I think Tenten should go first, and then X3, if you want to talk about how like our guides have changed.
I
over
have
time.
no idea. I have a very different take when it comes down to audience selection that I was going to talk about. I thought about this for a long time, but I'm actually not afraid of kicking people out the door. I feel like one of the struggle that content creators always have is they feel bad kicking people out the door because it's like each like person you kick out is like -1, right? And when content creating is all about like the number of audience you have, kicking some person out the door feels really bad. But I thought about it and like I'm actually not afraid of kicking people out of the door because I feel like if they're not a good fit. They're just not a good fit. I would much rather, because here's the problem that I have, and that is like, yeah, it surely doesn't capture bigger audience base, which is mean less views. But like, I would rather not adjust the way I do videos or my content just to attempt to capture more people, because then I stop making content that I like, but I start making content that just whatever get me the most to, and that's not what I want to do, right? Like, I'll be honest, like there are a tons of different video I could do if I wanted views, but I'm like, don't really want to do that. And I'm putting about a year and a half ago, I told myself that I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to do videos for views, but I just want to do whatever I want. So
that makes sense.
But you also have a job.
Actually, like, not
you also have a job on the side, Tenten.
I'm actually like not afraid of kicking. I'm actually not afraid of just straight up kicking people who I think don't belong to my target audience out at all.
Okay. I mean, that is very consistent of you. I mean, I see that like every
but
know.
it's something that most people don't do, because as a content creator, your number define you, right? So if it definitely like feels bad to kick people out, which is like -1. But I'm actually like not afraid of doing that. So get fucked.
-1. Okay.
Oh, I mean, audience capture is definitely a real thing, and I think for meta content creators, I think it's very, very, at least people who straddle the line between meta and like casual content, very easy to get caught up into like what your audience wants.
Yeah, it's true.
But XF, I mean, you've been at like the forefront of like how our guide philosophy has changed over time at KQM. If you want to explain a little bit to us.
So before we kind of like, we're like, okay, we're gonna make a guide, and we're just gonna assume they know all this stuff already, and we just tell them like where you would put your characters, right? I think, but then I think it was Raiden that really blew up, sort of like KQM shit.
Really?
And it was like Raiden and Kazuha, that time, like in between that time period, was when we got a huge surge in like viewership and guides, I think. And we're like, wait, people don't even know what we're talking about. So
yeah,
more the guides were like, okay, let's have glossary, let's define some of these terms for what we're talking about in TC. Let's like explain them. It's like some people even started explaining them in their own guide and like explain how it applies to like said character. And then we started doing like some mini getting into TC sort of project, and like now we started like expanding on infographics to be more specific but still geared towards casual. So that makes sense. It was just more explanation. Then now we're doing stuff with basically like a blogish type post type of guide where we give you like, here's some bare bones stuff that we're still exploring, and it's like we're constantly just making more of these resources to get a wider audience. And to me, I think it's good that we're doing this. It's just it is a lot of work.
Yeah.
Because like if you're at the top, why would you want to like if you're at the top and you're doing stuff at the top, might as well keep doing stuff at the top. But thing is, it doesn't really translate down towards the TC knowledge pyramid well, right? So you have to spend.
Wait, what do you mean by that?
So if you're at the top of EGT, like knowledge, right? You would. So some people would prefer to just keep working on EGT stuff, find more wacky shit with the game. But others might feel more inclined to teach and to get people up to where they are, or to translate the information to a digestible sort of media that other people can use to kickstart off of.
So yeah, to like kind of explain more about that, like at the highest level of theory crafting, there's like some really weird shit, really esoteric stuff. Like we know how frames work in the game, we know how hit lag, how long it takes to go from Albedo's first normal attack to his second normal attack. Like that's how dumb it is. But this kind of information doesn't translate well at all to guides. And there's been quite a bit of pushback about like to what degree we should like quote dumb down our content for. But yeah, I think KQM has kind of focused a lot more recently on like trying to bridge that gap more. Like our content is still pretty theory crafting heavy, but you won't find that like, oh yeah, you're gonna use GTW's ICT here and now. We're just gonna tell you like what buttons you need to push, and then sometimes we explain why it works.
Oh, that's interesting though, because I mean that's also, I guess, to a lesser degree on my end, but that's also how I feel like this shift has been doing. It's interesting though, because that's also kind of done out of growth in a sense. I mean, I know that you guys aren't trying to capture a different audience, you're just trying to become more accessible to a wider audience. And well, obviously, like Tenten's preference is to not do that, and I think it's interesting that KQM does is doing that. And I agree. Like when I make guides, I definitely like KQM. Obviously, it's a big resource, and I do go through the library and see all that esoteric shit. But then at the end of the day, I also know that these are things I will have to leave out because, yeah, like you said, they don't necessarily help the usual player.
There was actually a Reddit thread this today. It was like talking about how Kaching C2 has been bugged for like fucking forever, and the top comment was someone linking an entry from the library like in our vault, so it's not like pasted anywhere, it's like deep inside the library. And they were like, yeah, they've known about this for like a year now. It was really bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely like our resources are really good for content creators. I think really good for people that are trying to do more theory crafting stuff. So I mean, it kind of good for
They
everyone.
are.
Yeah.
They are. And I think one thing is actually because I was talking to Migo about this. Migo is my resident theory crafter. Like I don't want to say he's my theory crafter, but
Half
like
guy.
he's our guy. He's our guy. He's the one who's like the resident in our Discord server. He's the
Mhm.
first theory crafter I really got to know. And honestly, I was surprised because I was like, wait, don't all theory crafters come from KQM? No, but that was before I got to know you guys. So I don't know if there's an expectation that a lot of people have that content creators are also theory crafters, because I've seen some people like demean or look down on some content creators information because that they know that that content creator isn't the one who discovered that or theory crafted that information. And so there's like doubt, like is this legit, is this genuine, because we know that you're a video maker but you're not a theory crafter, so how can
I
you claim
mean,
this
like,
information?
it's not like too crazy because like in this call you have like someone who really popularized Venti. You also have someone who really popularized Kokomi and Yai, and then you also have someone who's like who found Hu Tao's animation cancel. But like I don't think when we made our content at any time ever did we ever really consider like people are gonna steal this. I think one
Yeah.
of the guiding principles, guiding ideas about KQM, at least in our even in like at the very top of like our list of shit to read, it says that we do our work so that other people can learn and make better decisions. And I think that's always been like the goal about theory crafting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that because at least right on this end, like on the KQM end, that's not problematic. I mean, it's not problematic that other people are able to use that information and make it more accessible in whatever kind of guides and such. It's just very weird and box. It's like you're boxing in. If you were like a viewer who feels like the content creator or the channel, the owner of the YouTube channel, has to be a theory crafter in order for that information to be legit. It's like a very weird boxing in sense. And
I understand what you mean, it's like
Mm-hmm.
not every content creator has to do Genshin Theorycrafting content. It's just strange from our perspective sometimes that there are content creators who may not have the most robust conclusions, is the word I'll say. Not wrong, but not very well studied or like read up on.
That's so diplomatic of you.
Yeah, I mean, like, publicly, I don't think like KQM ever really goes after anybody for anything unless like literally reading our guides word for word and then not crediting us or anything like that. But I mean, there's just couple of content creators every now and then we'll pull up a clip in like the public chats that will show up and it's just like someone saying some really weird shit. But
Oh no, I get that. Like,
and it's
there
not like,
is using information, misusing information or like not making the best of information is a whole other problem entirely.
it's not like people go after like opinions or anything, but like when some people would say like oh, you can use Chi-Chi to generate cryo energy for your team. Well, Chi-Chi literally doesn't generate any energy at all. That type of information is just wrong. Or some people will say like you have to pull for Yalan because she's objectively better than Xingqiu.
And then
like
Xingqiu's. Oh
that
god.
stuff is kind of not that healthy
not
for people to
accurate.
get. Yeah. So like in that sense, like yeah, there are people we kind of disagree with, but I don't know if I think people are just predisposed to just doing it because they have a bunch of math and they know stuff. But officially, yeah, KQM doesn't do any of that kind of stuff.
Okay. I mean, it's great that you don't. And I think that, well, I would hope that eventually everyone, like the wider player base or the Genshin community that does follow guides or does follow meta, that they understand that information, at least the information generated by KQM, is relatively open source, of course, giving credit and links, but like, I would hope that that is something universally understandable by the community.
Just to be fair, like I would personally say that it's open, but there is a part of like the community that has like splintered off from KQM because they don't think that we're transparent enough. So just to like keep it fair, I understand what you mean, but yeah. Does anyone else have anything to say about this topic?
I find it's really a lot of content creators that are not like TCers, right? Or not in the TC heavy community, they'll take something they heard, like surface level thing, and they won't really like elaborate much on it when they do content on it. And it causes their viewers to also think in the same way. And it's like, looking back on it, it's not true. One of the things what like kind of ticked me off was when a lot of people said that Yai had energy issues, right? And yes, 90 cost burst, not great particle gen, but we later figured out that you could just not build ER burst whenever you need to, and the damage is similar, if not better, sometimes. And it's like, I wish people weren't so like definitive with what they were saying, and it was just like, give a little bit more time for exploration, or like say it's not set in stone yet, because when you have such a big audience, they'll just take and run with it, and you don't get people who like you don't like, because stuff like that with the Yai stuff, it takes a bunch of time to do the math for, and then to like figure out. And if someone gets one video out, they say like, oh, can't do this, can't do that, well, they're not going to watch any other video unless you provide like a huge updated, right? And it's like people will just take with that sit with that for their rest of their life, and then just be like, oh yeah, this is this because I heard it from this video, and it's like never gets updated, I guess. And it's like,
Yeah.
I think okay, here's the interesting one. I think no one actually updated a video. This is one of the reasons why I started doing a split video where there's a first impression where I label it as like my first impression of how I feel playing the characters. And at first, like in the first impression video, I would say like, oh yeah, I feel like I have issues. But then those are the reason why I start making a 1 week in meta video for every character I make now, just so like it's like when we have a better pictures, make sure like these are correct, right?
Yeah.
And I'm actually trying really hard to stay away from this character is not better than that characters in the first impression videos, because I will just save those for the second videos.
Yeah.
No, say
that
it in the
makes
first one. It
sense.
gets more views, bro.
What? So yeah,
No.
go for it.
No, you finish.
Oh, I was gonna say the format I want to do right now is the first impression video is only like immediately observable problem on the character itself, like the character problem that you can kind of observe or think the character has just by playing the characters. And then the second video is where the cows come in, or maybe like, for example, Yai at first observable is like she might have ER issues because of the 90 cows, as exactly say. But then the calculator would show it actually doesn't matter because building damage and not bursting every rotation is just better.
Yeah. I think that's also like important for people to acknowledge, is that like like you said, it takes time to generate those calcs and generate that knowledge and discover those things. And I mean, you make a good point that people will just watch one of those videos done on release. And I do those videos done on release, and I will admit that there are things, of course, that will change in the future, which is why I also like to do updated guides. But I also think it is a bit dangerous as well of viewers to watch one video and take it for granted, even though it's very easy to do, because it can be very easy to just watch one video, forget about it, and then that's the impression you'll have for like the next year or so. And I think that people, I guess, who aren't really invested in learning more, like that is the tendency to do that. So I do agree that that can be a bit misleading. And yeah, I think like just acknowledging how things can change and then doing updated content on such that well, I don't know if it's enough, but I do kind of wish that people weren't too static on things, I guess. And even though it's hard to not be.
I mean, even on the content creator side, it's a pretty hard balance to strike.
Yeah.
Like, how fast should KQM release something?
After you wish.
Is a very hard question to really get to, or a really hard answer to get to. And certainly, there's a lot of disagreement even within KQM on whether or not we should publish stuff this early. Like, should we wait this amount of time? Stuff like that. We've gotten into a lot of big arguments about it, actually.
I think there's a balance, right?
Really?
If you're too late, people like would just already have their mind made up and doesn't care anymore, which is what Sevy was talking about. I think there's definitely a balance between like trying to push it as fast as possible, even though you don't have 100% of the complete picture, but you have like 90% of it, and it's good enough.
I mean,
which is obviously like unfortunate, but
to explain like the other perspective, it's that so sometimes a unit comes out like Kokomi, where it takes a very, very long time to actually determine whether or not they're dog shit or not. And obviously nowadays we wouldn't ever call Kokomi dog shit or anything like that. She's pretty good. But back in the day, like people kind of hold stuff over people's head a lot in TC. Like if you get like a couple things wrong, people kind of bring it up all the time.
It's
later.
not even that. It's okay. Here's something that's really, I don't know if you noticed this, Sevy, because like I think you were not around during the Kazuha early day, or at least KKM. But like people love talking about how Kazuha is not, or people love talking about how TC were wrong on Kazuha and label Kazuha as not as good as Sucrose, when we were literally the first people to go against that community impression of Kazuha wasn't against Sucrose. We're literally the first people to say Kazuha is actually really good. I remember exactly because me, Artesians, and Sajaf was sitting in a call on the first day, and then we were like, it's been a while since we say a character is really good. Maybe Kazuha should be the character that we just call as really good and you should roll. And we did exactly that. But because the general impression of Kazuha was bad, people just pinned it on us anyway, even though that's not what we said at all.
Oh my god, you guys got scapegoated.
It's funny because I make pre-release analysis video based on leak before.
Yeah.
And then in the video I made about Kazuha, he's the highest score I've ever given. Like in my Kazuha pre-release, I gave him like a 4 out of 5 rating, which means like he's a really good roll, but not a must roll. Which, to be honest, I think is quite fair at the time of the impact, right? Considering Venti was still really good, I give him 4 out of 5, and it's the highest rating I've ever given a character in my entire history of DC. And people were still pinning on us about how we were wrong on Kazuha, and like, oh, you guys said Kazuha sucks.
Yeah, I mean, you do give famously low ratings, which is really funny because if people hadn't watched your previous videos, they'd be like, "What? Just 4 out of 5?" But then like 4 out of 5 is actually like high for you.
Yeah, it's really high, right? Yeah, it's like literally the higher one.
I mean, when you speak with like authority, you always kind of catch flack whether you do or you don't. I think like I have a really bad like impression of Eula still, and generally like I went really hard on Eula, and a lot of people still don't forgive me for it.
Damn.
Or even for our Amber video on KeqingMains. There's like one weapon that was calced wrong, and then like we didn't emphasize how you should focus in on charge attack gameplay, and people really don't like KeqingMains in like Amber like communities because our video was too negative or something like that. And I mean, even Zajif would probably agree. Like, well, he doesn't really care anymore. He'll call a unit bad if he wants, but yeah. I mean, certainly we are used to like the dance between like what we can and can't say.
I think that on my end, like, you know how before I said that I like to avoid drama? One of the ways I avoid drama is avoiding saying how quote-unquote good or quote-unquote bad a character is. I think
where the fun
pretty
comes
common.
in. That's pretty
common. Yeah.
I know it is fun, but like I would honestly rather avoid it. And I think that some of my audience appreciates that I just say what a character can and can't do, what they excel at and what they're not great at. If they're just like a side grader, they can fulfill X role, because I know that some of them have like I've gotten this comment several times that like this person thinks so negatively or this person thinks so positively, and then they find a relatively neutral voice and then it kind of balances it out. Like, honestly, I will just leave that to you guys, but that is one of my ways of avoiding those.
It's actually like pretty common. I think people don't notice it because they probably don't think about it as a content creator, and that's exactly the reason why I go against it. So it's kind of to put in this perspective. When your opinion is like this character can be really good when you put investment in them, you aren't really making a what I like to call a definite conclusion. You're just leaving it to user interpretation, and so therefore, like, you're relatively neutral, which is what Sevy's kind of say. Now, I kind of learned this when I was coming from earlier game before, which noticeably was a card game. And what people would used to do is they would say like, this card can either be really good or really bad, and then everyone would praise them for it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Because everyone would literally look at every single card and they'd be like, yeah, they know this card will be either really good or not that good. And then I'm like, yeah, what's that fucking mean? And then everyone would praise them for it, be like, oh, this guy's never get anything wrong. And of course you don't get anything wrong when all you say is this can either be really good or really bad, because you're right no matter what, right? If this card turned out to be good, wow, you're right. If this card turned out to be bad, you're right. And there were definitely, most people definitely didn't cash on, but there were definitely people, especially people who are playing card game at a more competitive level, they're like, this statement doesn't mean shit at all. And that was the one thing I learned to avoid, because I wanted to make a actual definite conclusion rather than not saying shit. And yeah, people would flame you for being wrong because you're making it like obvious at that point, right? But I would much rather do that. I really hate I as a person really hate the, oh, this can either be really good or really bad non-definite conclusion thing, even though it is the one that people would like more.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, there's more value in making that conclusion for the viewer or for the audience rather than just leaving it, I guess, out in the open. But I think what I also found out is because there are so many cases of it depends. Like, I hear it from Theorycrafters all the time. Like, it depends. Is this character good in this scenario? It depends, And I think that those are often valuable enough conclusions to use. Like, do you want to use a character this way? Because if so, then they will be great. But if you try to use a character this other way, then that's when they'll be not so great. And I think that's at least a bit different from they can be good all the time, or they can be bad all the time, or they can't be good if you invest in them. Because I mean, level of investment is another factor entirely. And I think that at the very least, I do avoid putting those evaluative statements in the first round, like in the first time a character is freshly released, because I do know, like XF said, that it does take time to make different sorts of conclusions. If I said at the start that Kokomi was like a dogshit character, then I would take that video down now. But thankfully I didn't. And that the initial video I made is still valid. So it's like once a character reruns, I feel like it's a bit safer to make a conclusive evaluation. And that's when I feel more comfortable doing so. But then when a character is freshly released, it's like, let's just explore this character and then do the it depends.
I think for me, with how like rating characters and stuff, like I stopped looking at how they are in general. I more so look at like how they are in their supposed role, right? Like
Yeah.
when a character drops, unless MiHoYo really wants to, they could be the best character. They could not, right? They could just be like, made this character for fun, right? If you, from some TCers perspective, or like their kit's not amazing, right? But for me, it's like, it's better for me, maybe it's because like I don't really care about pull recommendations anymore, because I feel like a lot of what we say is the same thing every time now. So it's like, I might as well invest my time in something else. But like, for me, it's like if I look at, I guess another like one example, Yoimiya versus Hu Tao, the single target pyro DPS.
Oh dear.
So yeah, we have like a 500 of them, right? But they like, you can, at least with Hu Tao and Yoimiya, you can actually separate the two into their own different thing. Where yes, Yoimiya is quote unquote less DPS, but the fact that she's an option, like arguably easier option, depending on who you're asking, and also like having different teammates and different like goals in mind for the character, I feel like okay, if you need this exact thing, or you prefer these elements of Yoimiya over Hu Tao, then just go for Yoimiya. It doesn't matter. It's like I feel like people are so fixated on like damage, and then now we're playing Abyss where it's like it doesn't matter how much damage you're doing. You're fighting something annoying anyway, so you might as well pick something that gives you at least a headache. like right now, right? The okay, I call it the Valorant PMA, but it's like it's the
Valorant
pyramid.
PMA.
It's the like new robot thing, right? That thing's a piece of shit. Straight up, it is. And it doesn't matter how strong your international team is. It goes invincible or it goes invulnerable. It's 70% resistance to every fucking element. Doesn't matter how strong, right, your character is. Just pick something that will make you not want to cry. And it's like those types of teams, right? Like Child, Xiangling, right? They're typically front loaded and they have long DPS window. And again, honestly, against this boss, that sucks. You want shorter DPS windows because you only have such amount of time to hit it. So
Yeah.
and it's like I get before you want to pick things that are more general for the game, but to be honest, I don't even think like there are so little characters that actually fit into that generalist sort of category that if you have the opportunity, like if you're already 36 starring, you might as well expand horizontally just so you don't give yourself a migraine every time you're like the abyss comes.
That's so true, though. I mean,
Like I think another example, they do this a lot now. They have like 4 Fatui mages like across the entire abyss, and you can't
ugh.
effectively omega group them. And if I was playing Hu Tao into that, I think I would actually rip my hair off because I'm hitting 4 different enemies separately, and they're all still hitting me, right? But if I recommended someone to pick Venti there, even though he's not like recently he's not amazing, right? He had Venti there. At least you can get 3 out of the 4 and save a headache, right?
Yeah. I
Oh,
think that
definitely. I mean, KeqingMains content like has had to scale as time has gone on. Like at the beginning, everything was really focused on value, 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 value. Can it clear the abyss with like relatively low artifact strength? And that worked a lot. But as time has gone on, we've gotten more units that work together or can sub in for each other pretty, not like perfectly optimally, but good enough. And we're at the point where like we know that even if you're at 30% of the theoretical max of like artifact rolls, you're gonna clear the abyss. Like it's mind-bogglingly like not that hard, but there still is that like gap of investment that we still have to accommodate for in our content.
yeah. I think that that's also a testament to how you have had to, well, at least for XF, like how you have had to change your goals as the game progresses as well. I mean, Genshin is, obviously they're not doing the power creep thing. They're mostly doing the horizontal expansion thing. So, I mean, it does make more sense that at this point, it's just what's most suited for the current abyss, and Nilou shines in that. And since abyss so far, probably for a very long time, is the main thing that we've got to measure things accordingly or to adapt things accordingly, then like that's all we've got. Like what else are we going to, it's not a vertical scaling anymore.
Yeah, I'm kind of in that boat, and I'm like okay, aside from the 2.0 initial jump for abyss difficulty, recently it's been about the same. They just add like some artificial block or like something that isn't directly related to damage. I'm like, okay,
I don't know, bro. They put
so
some big ass cringe in the abyss sometimes.
they do, but
They really like
they,
putting like electro manifestation or whatever, and like
Ugh.
dogs on the other side, or like they just, I don't know. The abyss is still pretty fucking annoying.
it's not in like that's what I mean though. It's annoying, but not necessarily like it's not like I'm literally hitting a dummy with a million health. I feel
Yeah,
like
I mean, like when I think difficult, I imagine the first Inazuma Abyss with the fucking Kairagi that literally couldn't be moved and would just fucking one shot you. That was a real fun abyss.
I hate Karagi right now.
like that's what I mean though. Like I don't like you can build these generalist teams into that stuff, and it will work, sure, and you might just not care if you're that have that much gearing on them, right? But
Yeah.
at what point you're like, okay, if I get this one character and I can just like turn off my brain and it auto completes it, and depending on the type of content, it will come back. Like the first one that is prevalent is single target boss. That shit will always come back. It is always like there in some capacity in Abyss. You might as well get a character that can do that thing for you. Like,
Yeah.
Why don't you just pull a character that can do everything? XF, thoughts?
There is none. Actually, Kokomi kind of does everything.
Excuse me. Her name is Raiden. Okay.
Yeah, but you even like that's what I mean though.
Giga
Raiden, right?
Chad.
we say she's good because she's generalist, but even in like some scenarios, she's kind of like you can't even play her.
Excuse me,
It's-
but you don't have C2? Don't you
I've
have a
seen
that.
wallet, XF3?
But it like Thundering Manifest. Okay, well, GG. And then but like even if they did bring back that 2.0 gimmick with the energy thing, well, like half of the time you can't even play your item because she doesn't get energy. So it's like, okay, well, unlucky, I guess.
Unlucky. Yeah.
I don't know.
mean,
It's kind of why I like rolling for horizontal rather than constellation, because I feel like having more characters give you more option whenever you need the one that does work.
I mean,
Which is
honestly,
why-
we've been rolling horozontally since like Cosmic
Yeah,
came out. Let's be
I think-
honest.
I think people don't realize why we recommend rolling for horizontal. It's just for that reason. Like certain characters, I think are definitely worth rolling. Like Hu Tao for a single target, not just because Abyss always have a single target, but it's just like a area of coverage that you can have. And then like you want really strong AoE team, you want really strong team with well, I really don't really like how miHoYo is forcing every element in now. So like, because I can't really say, oh, you need a strong Geo team, strong Electro team, strong Crowd team, strong Pyro team, strong Hydro team. But I'm curious how much does Danjo play into that factor actually.
so miHoYo isn't doing the element side, but they're going the reaction side, where it's like
That's
here you
basically
really want-
element.
but like you don't need like it's not like other gacha game where you have like a team per element, right? But like the core thing that they generally revolve around is pure damage for like single target crap, some grouping or freeze for like really annoying moving enemies, and then they have like now recently they really want to push this gimmick of Dendro, especially with like the Valorant cube.
You're
like-
Valorant.
Valorant cube.
Like if you don't have Dendro on, like if you don't quicken it, you're literally gonna spend 10 years breaking random crap.
I mean, it's
so you
not the
can
first
anyone
boss
hit it.
that we've had that's just like
Yeah, I mean,
permanently giving me a disease. I mean, we've had
The
triple
Ruined
Genkis, we've
Serpent.
had Ruined Serpent, we've had High Tide, Low Tide Kairaki.
Oh my
Yeah, but
god, that
this is I think this is the first time where they're putting a literal reaction check, where if you don't have this reaction, you're just going to suffer.
Big cringe.
I mean, I think
I
it's
think
I think it's
cringe.
almost just as bad as like requiring Geo against the fucking Wolf Lord. Or
Yeah, I think it's very
requiring
cringe.
Cryo against like two heralds or whatever. Like there's like no difference for it to me. They're all
I guess-
fucking horrible.
I guess for me, it's like in those scenarios, you really could just bring a level 20 just to hit element, but now you're putting into a reaction. You have to somewhat build an archetype, like a team archetype around
Yeah, that's
it.
fair. You get to use 2 slots instead of 1. I get you.
yeah.
But
No
I think
grouper, Sasuke.
I think we'll jump topics real quick here. A really big turnaround from our normal topics. But kind of related to like our discussion earlier about our audiences. But I don't know if you know Tenten or XF3, but Genshin has like a really, really big female player base. Between
Yeah.
content creators, players, or even Theorycrafters and KeqingMains, there's a lot of women that play Genshin. Have you like ever considered the ramifications of this? Are there any interesting things that have come out of this? Would you say?
Oh, my
Um,
audience base is doomed.
Yeah.
Tenten,
What
what's
percentage
your-
of your
what's your
audience?
distribu-
Yeah.
Yeah.
On YouTube?
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's not as bad on YouTube. On Twitch, my chat is all cool.
Oh my
So-
god.
Let me look at YouTube really quickly. Female.
I want to bet that it's.
17.6.
That's actually a lot higher than I thought it
That's
would
actually
be.
not bad. Yeah.
I thought it would be like
Wait.
8% or something.
Let me check mine.
That means
I
probably
think-
at 25 to 30.
I'm at 21.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
not as high as I thought.
that's really high. And then
But that's actually not as high as I thought.
Fred from Genshin Optimizer, his is like 8%.
yeah.
It's bad. He's got a sausage fest over there.
That's the interest. I mean, that is the thing that I wanted to ask you guys about when I first suggested this, is that on the audience, like, at least for my YouTube channel and then what shows for Tenten as well, it doesn't reflect, like the gender balance doesn't reflect the wider player base. And that's why I was like quite surprised when you said that in KQM the community is pretty well represented,
I
because
don't
it
know if
doesn't
it's like
reflect as well.
super well represented, but I'll say that like there's like an ungodly amount, or not ungodly, but like a surprising amount of women in like KQM theory crafting section and the staff. I'll have like a funny story, like something that's come out of this is that like the first time we had our TC staff meeting, there was like 6 or 7 women in like the call with like 20 people, and it was very confusing for someone that traditionally has played like MMOs that are just like super male dominated.
Oh, MMO is not actually that bad. I think Final Fantasies 14 probably have a pretty good female population.
Yeah, but I don't think a lot of women are playing RuneScape, brother.
Okay, then you're playing the wrong game.
My bad. I think I don't know how much it really impacts KQM's audience too much. I think that like the community in KQM is fairly open. Like on my staff alone, there's like a lot of LGBT people. Like surprisingly, there's a lot of women. Like there's probably more women on my staff team than there are men right now.
Yeah, and
think so.
that is very interesting to me because like any area of Genshin players, except maybe for Twitter, but at least in terms of content, video or streaming content, when I see or when I talk to guide makers or meta content creators, like their audience is always heavily skewed. And that's why, exactly, like someone in chat said, more generalist content channels, like the entertainment based channels, of course they have a more balanced audience. But then when it comes to less casual stuff, like more meta stuff, there is this skewed, there's a bias there. And I also definitely see it in the content channels themselves, because I haven't really seen other prominent women guide makers, at least in the YouTube space. And that was always strange to me, and especially stranger now that you mentioned that within KQM it's pretty balanced. So I don't know if
I mean, you should join KQM.
Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, there is like a lot of fucking women. Maybe I think Reed said that the split is 50-50, or it's pretty close. I think I probably agree. There's like a lot of fucking women in KQM.
Yeah, so like I don't know if you would have like theories or takes on why that doesn't reflect in outside of KQM.
Wait, that's a good question.
That is a good question. I don't know. I would know the answer to this ever. I don't know. Except, do you have any ideas?
I got no fucking clue.
You know what the answer is? You know what the answer is? It means sample size is not an accurate representation of population usage rate. Haha.
Oh my. Wow. Who would have the larger sample size though?
I mean, I guess one thing I do notice is that there is more female representation when there's discussion, and there's when it's just like told, like I think because YouTube does not really give up a good area for discussion. It's like you're just told, you're watching a video, right? Your entertainment. But I do find it that like regardless of what community I'm in, or, like Genshin is an example, but like when I play League, right, or when I'm at a different Discord server for like something else, or like Overwatch was a big one for me too. When there was discussion to be had where like people could just join in and talk, there were just more women. I no idea what if it correlates to anything, but it's like I do notice that when, like, I guess more if there are more men, right, in the Genshin community, then women are just would rather speak their word, I guess, more often. But like in like say in TC, right? I had the most amount of progress in TC, like finding things, doing things. It's like I'm working with a female, right? I have no idea why. I've had some experiences with like I just don't know who they are anyway, so it doesn't matter who their to me like gender is not even like a factor for me working with them. But it's just
It's like
odd.
it's not
like
even
how
like we
the
know who
art
they are until like we enter a voice call to like start writing, and it's just like, oh, what?
Yeah,
Didn't
of
even
course.
know. Would never have guessed.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, I would never think that it becomes a prerequisite in any work that you do. It's just interesting where audiences lean towards. Someone in chat said lore side has a few prominent women creators. And I did notice that like in almost every other realm or Genshin niche, there are more prominent women creators. And then in KQM, there's also prominent women staff. So it's like.
But the consumers of like meta content tend to be men. Yeah, I don't really know how to explain it. Maybe, I don't know. There's just real gamers out there trying real hard to get their numbers up or something. But, and maybe women in Genshin tend to enjoy the story more or the narrative stuff. I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I don't think we'll ever get a real definitive answer for this.
That's true.
But it is interesting.
No
to think
idea.
Yeah, it is something that I've been like asking myself a lot because sometimes the disparity or the bias becomes really apparent. Sometimes it isn't, but it is something I like to contemplate sometimes.
It is
Yeah.
funny though. So it's like I go to college and there's like we have a Genshin like server thing. And it's like only the guys, because I know some of these people in person. It's only the guys that talk about their artifact rolls. It's only the guys that talk about their gacha luck. But then it's always females like sharing the art. They're like talking about the story, or they're like they're like, oh my god, this event was so fun. And there's like all the guys are like, dude, wait, there's an event. I'm like, okay, well, it is what it
Yeah.
is, I guess.
Wacky. Yeah, I mean, I think if you have any other questions about KQM's like population, it's pretty interesting. And I think someone asked or someone implied just now that we select for women. That's so dumb.
Yeah.
Okay, KQM has never ever put on a staff thing. Like, we don't do voice interviews or anything. We have a Google form. People sign up and say they want to work with us, and then we just pick people that we think are cool. So yeah.
Yeah.
There are at least 5 staff on TC's team that I thought were male.
Yes.
And then they're like, I was like, oh, okay. Did not expect that.
Definitely,
Surprise.
like, the first time I had a conversation with Reens, who's like one of the admins at KeqingMains, did not expect her to be a woman, like, at all. But I think moving on this topic, unless anyone else has anything else to say.
Nope.
I'm good.
Nilou?
Yeah. Nilou has been very controversial. On Tenten's channel, they rage at him because he says Nilou instead of Nilo. In KQM,
Really?
people in
Yeah.
Nilou's the right pronunciation though.
He says Lilu sometimes.
Oh, Lilu.
And then
okay.
in KQM, we argue about whether or not she's too restrictive, whether or not her passive is strong enough to warrant her being so exclusive. Is she a functional unit without her passives, and things like that. And certainly, these questions have been bouncing around in the Genshin content creator sphere. What are you guys' takes on restrictive character design? Do you think that this is like healthy way to diverse the roster? And we'll talk about how good Nilou is in a second. But like, do you think that this is a
Why
good
don't you
idea?
check out my new video to find out? It's not
Based.
uploaded yet, so he's not done yet. But I'm gonna have a new video talking about the game design perspective from Nilou. Fuck, did I say it wrong? Fuck, now I'm so confident. Bro, okay. But I did make a new video about the game design aspect about her. I think it's pretty interesting to learn because I did do a lot of interesting research. My specialty is doing research chat. So, in particularly, I actually reached out to a couple of game designer friends that I know to kind of discuss it, and I was given really interesting answers that kind of robbed my perspective. So, I'm not gonna say how I know those people because I can't. But
Mm-hmm. Is there a gist of their answers, or are you gonna save that for the video?
well, no, I think it's too hard to explain, but essentially it's come down to, okay, I'll give you the answers, but it would be one like people would probably not expect. The very particular reason why MiHoYo
Live
made
Tenten
this
reaction.
passive that Nilou can only be ran with the Android Hydro characters is to lead player to run her with the Android Hydro characters. Like, it's basically the way of MiHoYo spelling it out, be like, just play Bloom.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a design decision that I agree with, but the answer I was given is because Genshin Impact is very casual heavy. Unless you spell it out in front of them, they wouldn't really know it. And so from the perspective of people who doesn't know anything, especially people who doesn't consume YouTube guide on knowing how to play the characters, it makes them feel completely different than ours, the way we see it.
Well, it's funny that you should say spell it out because they spelled it out in like 3 paragraphs that like no one wants to read.
But yeah, from my personal perspective, I think it's a pretty bad decision to kind of restrict your team, not just because it limit her meta string, but just because it limit her flexibility. One of the most interesting thing when it comes down to Genshin Impact is drafting 4 character together and think about how they work. And that's not just meta, right? Like obviously meta is drafting a really strong team and seeing how it work together. But even for a player who are casual, maybe they want to draft 2 of their favorite characters and think about how they work. And this is kind of like, think about at the beginning of the game when you guys didn't really know the meta. It's like, oh, let me draft Noel in because he has a shield. Let me draft Kazu in because he can jump in the overworld. Being able to draft your own characters and being able to provide your own reason why is a really huge part of Genshin Impact. And she unfortunately took that part away.
Yeah, I got that. I think that I honestly think it's an odd design choice. Okay, so this is kind of how I felt about
Just say it,
Shenhe
Sebby.
when
Just
she
say
got.
you hate it.
I actually don't. I don't mind that much. Like I'm not as mad about it. I'm just kind of like, really? But this is kind of how I felt about Shenhe. And like looking back at it, Shenhe is nothing compared to Nilou. But when Shenhe came out, I honestly thought that she came out a bit too early. But then they didn't release any cryo characters after that, so I was like, okay, I guess that's where they're gonna leave it. But then obviously like Shenhe, she doesn't have as strict restrictions. She just serves a very specific section of the character roster. But then for Nilou, I'm not too mad about it. I kind of understand where they're like, just play Bloom because no one else likes to play Bloom because Hyper Bloom is fucking broken. And then putting in a character that's just play Bloom. I don't know. I'm not surprised. Honestly, I'm not surprised.
Not surprised. Oh.
What about you,
Yeah.
XF? You're like a huge fan of Nilou. What do you think? What do you think about her restrictions and stuff?
I think the restrictions only. What's the word? I guess like as a parent because we only have 3 Dendro units.
Yeah.
That's kind of true.
Like I get the whole like, oh, I can, if I could, I would use this character with this because like legitimately, like if you could, you would run Electro with Nilou because EC gives you more blooms, right? or like the cryo crap, right? But I feel like MiHoYo just doesn't care about that stuff, and they just want you to like think about this character this way, and they already know like MiHoYo themselves. They're like they already know some of the popular teams, and they're basically kind of understand that some characters will just be played with a certain archetype all the time, like Hu Tao, right? Xingqiu is always there. They already know that. It's why they keep like shoveling in more. Like if you ever like the challenges, right? Hu Tao is probably there with a Xingqiu there or like a Yelan there, right? And like they did like an event where you had set teams, and they
Mhm.
showed that they understood that some characters were in certain like certain pairings and basically unseparated, and they just wanted like they're I guess like the whole like they want you to play Bloom, like they just want you to play Nilou with these characters. That way, like people aren't like wasting their time, I guess, trying to explore early. They just want people to play.
So
Um,
do you think that the restriction is necessary? Like, this passive
Nest.
literally does not work if you have any characters of not these two elements, or maybe Kokomi's like she has like an entire talent just dedicated to you are literally not allowed to crit, or yeah, stuff like that. Do you
I
think
think
that's
the
do you think that's like qualitatively different from like Shenhe's quills working really well with Cryo, or like Goro specifically working really well with Geo?
well, I think you can. So with Goro, I can at least explain
Oh,
like how I think of it.
he sucks like without the Geo thing, but like
Yeah.
Shenhe.
So for me, how I view Goro and Shenhe is that they're very strong in their specific team or like archetype of team. Like Goro being defensive Geo, Shenhe being cryo DPS. But they're usable elsewhere, albeit not maybe not the best, or maybe like they're or even if they are the best, they're not like they could release someone better in that slot, right? Like Shenhe in Eula teams, right? She is an upgrade over C6 Rosaria, but it's kind of like a scuffed implementation because Eula just doesn't have a physical damage dedicated support. Um, I think those restrictions are interesting, and it's like, okay, you can play these characters like here's where we want you to play them, but you can use them elsewhere. Kokomi's crit thing, I think they just wanted people to build something else other than the same 3 stats on every character. Legit, it's just I think they realize people don't really like going for attack damage percent and crit every time, and you're just kind of wasting artifacts. Why are they even in the game if you're just gonna fodder every single one of them? So they just like, hey, you can use it on her. Um, I think with Nilou's case, with the Bloom thing, I think it's strictly for balance purposes. Um, and yes, they could have made it like how Yelan and Yunjin are, where like depending on your team size of like or how many how many Hydro or Dendro units you had, it would scale up the Bloom damage a bit or increase like the cap. But like in actuality, that shit does not matter much. Like people run, I think Yelan's right. It's like or Yunjin is like you want her to be the solo Geo. People just run double Geo anyways. No one cares, right?
Mhm.
I think they realize people just don't care about those passives. Like they want Yelan to be what the Hydro stacking, right? People just run her solo Hydro sometimes. They don't really care. And like they want you to run like the quad one or like the triple for even more damage for the passive, but they're just like, whatever. People don't care. People don't care to want to push it like this, so we won't either. And they just said we'll just cut it off. And like
Right. You can go ahead. Keep going.
I think like if we had like let's say 4 more Dendro units, right? I feel like you could make a much more accurate assumption or claim on her like power level because fact of the matter is we have 3 Dendro units, 2 of which are not like the best, and then one of them is uh essentially
Mediocre.
essentially no not mediocre but
He's a
essentially
spread unit.
conflicting rule. Like I think like you can run Tainari and Nilou together, but like the problem is like, well, Nilou kind of wants to be on field, or she can be off field too, but Tainari doesn't take so much field time, so you're in like a weird state in between the two of them, where like you have one person who's on field but not for too long, and you have another person who's either purely on field or purely off field. So it's like, how do I fit these two together? And it's like you can't really do it in practice. But like I just think that's just a problem with Dendro at the moment. You really only have two off-field options. One is whatever, mediocre. The other one is good, but they also don't really offer any damage of their personal like talent damage. So you're basically just running an element placeholder, and then you have Tainari, which is basically just a aggravate type character, which is fine, but he doesn't help with the bloom stuff, right?
And then for Sevy and Tenten, do you think that her restrictions and her subsequent like bonuses are good enough for her?
Tenten, you go first.
What? Wait, what?
I can answer after as well. Sorry.
I think Nilou sucks. I mean,
Very blunt.
I think Nilou. I think a lot of people doesn't understand it properly, and that is Nilou individually could be a really strong character with the way she interact with the bloom. However, her team sucks, and her team is a side effect of her having a restricted passive. So you can kind of say it's her fault or not. I don't know, but I think mostly it's really her team. Like, she's a AOD focused character, but you can't bring a grouper. Really make me question how strong she'll be in the future when we get spread out content again. And this is kind of already observable in content where you kind of care about CC or grouper, namely content where like there's Mirror Maiden and Assistant Mages. The thing about Nilou, I think a lot of people are getting wrong, is that she has a very high floor but also a low ceiling. And one of the most common mistakes I'm observing right now is people assume her growth is linear from the floor. And so they see the very high floor and assume that she will grow linearly onto the ceiling, which is not true. Most of the characters in this game grow in a sigmoid function where it's like an S curve, and they do not grow linearly. And Nilou have one of the lowest ceiling in the game, which kind of made me question if she's going to be able to complete content where her floor isn't enough to carry her. And those are content like Magu Genki or like, let's say, fucking Valorant Q. Like, in a single target environment where the boss just stall a lot, which is like the Valorant queue, for example, I think realistically Nilou can perform. So that's my main problem.
I think I'll let Sevy go last then. Or
Okay,
did you want to
yeah.
go next?
No, you go ahead.
I don't like this type of restrictive character design. At least not because I don't think the bonus is high enough. I don't find it very fun to restrict one of the most creative ways to play Genshin, like to interact with the elemental system. And I think that the drawback of like, so Nilou doesn't like just buff like her blooms, it's anybody's blooms, right? So like in the future, it could be possible that like she's just there as a unit that buffs your blooms. I don't personally think that's like very interesting or fun. Restricting her strictly to Hydra or Dendro units, of which units like they're probably going to be like more 5 stars that are probably going to be relevant for her. I kind of doubt, like we have the Archon, we have Al Haidam, like these characters are probably going to be 5 stars, and I don't think like in the future, if she gets better Dendro units, I don't think that's a big enough of a justification for her I don't think that's a big enough of a justification to like pull for Nilou right now. Because yeah, she just doesn't get to interact with everyone else. Like if she had a passive that was stronger, that was like, okay, she also does like a ton of damage on field. Like she gets huge extra bonuses when she's on field, not just like the blooms, but her own personal damage. I think that'd be pretty interesting, pretty cool. But
That's fair.
Yeah, I personally think it takes fun out of like one of the most interesting parts of the game, team building.
Yeah. I do feel like it's way more felt because of the not just the limited dendros, but also like between hydro healers or between dendro or hydro healers at all. There's only Kokomi and Barbara. And I think for us to feel freer of that restriction, they wouldn't just need more dendro units. I would want like a couple more 4-star hydro units. Especially because like Candace isn't someone that you would particularly put in Nilou's team either. So, you know, it's like limited on both ends. And I do think that they released her too early. I think that like my personal feelings on the restriction is that I am not massively bothered by it because like most other hydro units are already pretty flexible, or at least they already have a lot of options. And I'm not saying that it's bad, of course, but I definitely saw MiHoYo trying to make things more and more niche and trying to make things feel like they will be the one to give you the team template. So yeah, I guess one of those things is that disappointed but not surprised, but also the disappointment, I would like to hope it wanes over time and that they know what they're doing and that they will release more characters that will fit that. But then and if they, because if they don't, then it's just sad. Like Nilou will end up being kind of a lose-lose situation. Like what, you pull her for future potential, even though I don't advise doing that, and then like that future potential is never fulfilled. Like I feel like by releasing Nilou in this way, Hoyo's kind of digging themselves a hole that they now have to fulfill, or else they essentially released one of the most saddest, not saddest, but you know, one of the indeed most limiting characters in the game. She already is, but then to the degree she is right now is pretty sad.
Don't worry, shall support soon.
I don't think like every character has to be like the greatest, obviously. Like, yeah, it'd be nice if Candace worked a little better and stuff like that. But like, I personally think that like if the restriction was there so that she couldn't interact with like Vaporize, then like why is she still popping up in Vaporize teams? I feel like there's better ways to, or they could have better incentivized her in Bloom teams, not just by cutting out like any way to like actually help out the Bloom team. Like like I think one of the biggest problems I have with Nilou is like chip damage can be pretty fucking horrid for her. It's very easy to get KO'd because if you're running EM stacking on like Kokomi, for example, where that's like another problem I have with her, but I'll get to that in a second. But like if you're running like the optimal way to run her, it's very easy for you to die because you're not stacking healing on Nilou at all. And on top of that, like this kind of just brings me back to the idea like what was I saying? Like I can't fill up these gaps in my team composition if I don't have certain characters. And the most optimal way to play her right now is like super not obvious. That's like one of my biggest problems with it. Like I imagine like if they're trying to make the game like easier for casuals, like forcing people to run EM on certain characters and stuff like that to realize their max potential isn't like very simple to explain.
Mm-hmm. But isn't it like still a high floor thing that like Tenten said, like even if you don't build Kokomi Or even Barbara. EM.
It depends. Like I would say, the classic. It depends.
It depends.
Because she really does struggle in single target. And if you use her in a composition that fixes that, meaning you don't use bloom and you go hyper bloom, you could do the same thing without her.
Yeah, it's like it's a lot. I think the biggest problem at Nilou is there's a lot of, well, if I'm not going to play her in the very cool bloom thing, then why am I pulling this character for? Like, you can use Nilou National, Pay Price Nilou, Hyper Bloom Nilou, but all of these come down to, well, so can every other character. So why I want to pull for this character that is not unique in any way other than her bloom, which I'm not going to use.
Don't get me wrong, I don't think she's like irredeemable or anything. I think like they designed her in a way that makes it really hard to like get across like the good things about her. I don't know. XF, what do you have to say? You're the resident Nilou enjoyer.
I think comparing her to single target is a bit disingenuous because obviously that's not the whole point of her character. I do think the grouping thing, like AoE character that doesn't have grouping, that is an issue, yes, but I don't find it an Omega issue just because of how inherently the game is currently. It's not like you're gonna be fighting like, or you will sometimes, but it's like you will majority get a bunch of the enemies you have to hit in at least one condensed area, or if there are spread apart, it's usually one or two. It's like I don't think it is a problem, yes, but I don't think it's like, oh, GG, the character's ruined, right? Like it's like I don't know. Like people talk about like for me the single target thing is actually really just awkward to me because people praise the same shit with Hu Tao and single target, but then AoE Omega Lol, right? Or Yoimiya AoE Omega Lol. But I don't know. It's like whatever.
Well,
I guess.
I think the complaint is that like it's not just Nilou has struggles like in single target. It's that her team compositions literally don't allow you to like accentuate her ability to perform really well in AoE. She does not have the ability to use an animo grouper.
Yeah, but my thing is right. That's fine. Yoimiya can literally only hit one person.
True, that's how Yoimiya sucked. Agree.
Even if you had a grouper, right? It doesn't matter. There are some characters that literally can only hit one thing at a time. And it's like for me it's like you can just flip that around and do AoE versus like AoE like prioritize. And it's like that's fine with me, right? And a lot of the times when we do have AoE chambers, even regardless like even if you disregard this abyss, right? With the Nilou buffs and oriented towards her, it's usually three or two things that are decently close together. And it is generally good enough if you have decent positioning, which you would already do regardless if you played Nilou or not.
Okay. So
I just think
quick question on Nilou here. I think an interesting way to wrap this one up is if someone asks you whether or not they should pull Nilou, what would your answer be? And like in a short description, like what would your justification for your answer be? Like just everyone here, like in a couple sentences, nothing too long.
I think if you like her design as a character, like Kit out of the window first. If you like her design as a character, you pull her now because it is easier to build, or it is better for you. I think we can all agree that Nilou has not released at a good time, right? Just with how the Dendro pool and Hydro pool is right now for her. But if you like her, you might as well just pick her up now and then just pick units in the future that are told to you by others that will work with her, rather than you trying to pick up every Hydro and Dendro to potentially use with her later. If you like her now, just get her now, even if you have no spot for her. But if you're looking at her in terms of kit, I don't think you pick her up unless you just like Bloom, like legitimately.
That's a very interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I mean that That's interesting because that is very fair to Nilou lovers. I personally would say that if you are like a low spender, that Nahida is very close, and that I think it's just way safer to wait for her and save for her and then wait for a Nilou rerun because well, by virtue of Nahida being an Archon and by virtue of her being a new Dendro unit, which is much needed rather than a Hydro unit that only specializes in one thing. It seems like a much safer pull. And, you know, unless you totally hate Nahida and you really love Nilou, then I would not want to interfere with anyone's pulling strategies whatsoever. But yeah, I definitely think that um Nahida, especially with, you know, side by side patches, is just the safer one to save for.
All right, Tenten, what do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, it's like ASAP3 said, like just like how Yorbia is pretty single target heavy focus. It's, you know, I'm gonna have to put like in a very similar vein as when Yorbia first came out, which is like when Yorbia first came out, I really didn't like how she's single target locked either. So for me, Nilou is like it's like a don't pull unless you really really like her. I think I realized this a while back, and that it's like people doesn't play every character they own, since even in the overall, you probably only play like half of them. So there are bound to be characters where you end up pulling but not playing anyway. And I get you really like certain character design, but if you really really like that design, there's always Twitter or Pixie or hentai website, whatever you want. Uh, so for me, like game, for me, like I think gameplay is definitely a huge part when it comes down to debating which character to pull for. And because Nilou gameplay just isn't in the greatest spot right now, I will honestly say she's more of a don't pull this character unless you really, really like her and you're fine with her being a teapot character.
Okay, I can, for one thing though,
$200 for Pixel.
I do think that her fantasy in the game is something.
Wait, which part? Whoa, wait, hold on. Which part?
The Bloom funny big number or funny,
Oh,
like,
not her
AoE
story, not her story dancing part.
No,
Okay.
I think the funny Bloom stuff is legitimately funny. Like,
True.
I think the general consensus everyone had when they first used her in Abyss was, "Holy shit, what's happening?" Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, I get that
cannot
kind
say
of
that
with like any other Dendro comp or like
no,
soup.
but I can't. The thing is though, like, I cannot say that about a lot of other DPS or not other DPS units, and it's like, if that's what you want in Genshin, like just having fun, then do it, right? Like I gotta be honest, funneling strongly for 10 minutes is not fun.
What?
Based.
I hecking love playing Xiangling.
Like, and what else is like also like waiting around and hoping I don't get one shot because I made my character purposely 2 health is also not that fun, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
oh god.
so like it is what, like, that's how I view it, right? I do think though, like, I do think that what they did with her as a game design standpoint, like for Bloom, like the fact that they break almost instantly, I think that they did a good job on making her fun. So if you want to go for fun, do that.
All right, and then
I was gonna say, like, what, I don't know if there are chatters who fall under this criteria or how large the demographic is, but what if there are players who really don't mind team restrictions and would rather just have templates spelled out for them, or who don't care about character versatility or team? Because obviously for us, like, I did realize that when we look at characters, we do like to see how the different ways that they can be used, and it, as we've stated several times, that team building and team diversity is one of the more interesting parts of Genshin. But what if maybe for the players that just don't mind, who do want that fun, who don't care about other reactions or things like that. Maybe
Okay.
they just wouldn't
I
care.
think
So this is pretty much what I talked about earlier when it comes to game designing, and the principle that I was told is something behind what they call a mechanics into a dynamic into aesthetic relationship. When it comes down to making video games, the only part that actually matter is not how difficult you make a game, but how it feels to play a game. After all, you make games so that people can have fun, which is the aesthetic part. You want your players to feel good. And it doesn't matter like how it achieved. If a player just wants to see Lito doing whatever, for them, like if it feels good enough, then it's a fine design characters. But you can't really control how a player feels, right? So how do you do that? So you do that by twisting the dynamics of the characters. And the way you twist the dynamic of the character is by introducing mechanics that kind of forces your audience to treat the character's dynamic in a certain ways, which then lead them to treating the aesthetic as a certain way. In this case, is the aspect of making Lilu focus on not only, okay? The word, I know it is restrictive, which is the word we will use, but let's use the word focus on instead. So in this case, the mechanics is to make Leo focus on playing her in a Bloom team, which is with Hydro and Danjo characters. In that case, it robbed the dynamics of how you're gonna be playing the characters rather than shoving her into 4 random characters, which is what casual player might do. It changes the dynamic for them to draft a Bloom team instead, which created aesthetic that Bloom is or Lido is a really good Bloom support. Lido is a really Bloom heavy focused characters for them, and it's exactly what we're talking about. It's basically spelling out the template for them. Except people might not have realized that, as mostly the casual side of the Genshin Impact might not have realized that if it wasn't spelled out, and so they want people to have that aesthetic, and therefore they wrap the mechanics like that.
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah.
I think I never gave my take on whether or not I would say yes or no to someone pulling for Nilou. I would probably say no. I wouldn't do it. For me, so to start, if you like Nilou, there's nothing wrong with that. If you like Bloom or a lot, you like Bountiful Cores, go ahead, pull for her. I don't care. Don't let me stop you. You got it. You got it, Chief. Okay, you're enjoying the game. You're enjoying it more than I am. Okay, but for me personally, I just don't really like her. I prefer units that are high impact, like Kazu or Raiden, and that's subjective. Some others will prefer units like Hyperbloom, Sucrose. Maybe they like Eula, maybe they like Zhao. I would say if you don't know much, if you enjoy locking yourself out of the Genshin elemental system, like playing Geo, and you want cookie cutter stuff, yeah, you could probably pull for Nilou. But there's plenty of units that have builds and rotations that anyone can perform. I think for account value, she actually doesn't provide much in the way right now that we understand. It could come out in a little bit that Nilou is super good in vape. Sure, I'll be wrong, but like right now, I would probably say it's safer to skip her and wait for a rerun. On top of like not having that many Dendro units, if you don't have Kokomi, it can be pretty painful if you don't have the healing to really back you up. So I would just wait. I won't say that she's bad or anything. It could turn out that she's really good. I'll give her that. But no, I would just wait.
I think as always, the most important part is making your own decision. It isn't like you have to follow the answer that other people give you. The most important part is you understand why you're pulling for characters and why you're doing it. And as long as you're not gonna regret for it, then I think it's okay. Like you understand, like, oh, Lilo might not be the strongest character in the game right now, but you don't really care and you're having fun using her, and that's okay. Then you decide to pull it, and that's fine.
Yeah,
The most important part is just to kind of understand it.
I wouldn't
Yeah.
pull her because like someone else said that they think her kit is like super creative. Oh my god, this is super awesome. Think about it real quick. Do you really only want to play this single team composition, or would you prefer maybe a more generalist unit that will add more subjective account value and make you allow you to play more compositions?
Yeah, I do agree that it's like you have to know what you're getting into, and I honestly wish that if all Hoyo wanted to do with Nilou is just tell people to play Bloom, that they made her passives easier to read, because it's like such a chunk of text. And if it were way simpler, like how Kokomi's crit passive is phrased, that would honestly be a big improvement. Like, I wish people, or I hope people at least do a little research on the character before they pull, because for example, like my sister, she plays Genshin very casually. She really wanted Kokomi, and I was like, yeah, get Kokomi. Like she's a great character and she's really pretty. Like my sister just wanted Kokomi because she was really pretty and she needed a healer, and then she pulled her. And then she looked at her passive and she was like, wait, what the fuck? Kokomi doesn't crit? And I was like, oh no, why don't you know this? And she wasn't really bothered by it, but she only found out in that moment. And hopefully people don't make that mistake too often.
What I got from that was Kekwe, she has a sister.
Yes, I'm not an only child.
My chat like to think I have a brother for some reason.
It's
but
me.
I don't.
They've seen me on stream before, Tenten, walking into your house.
No, every time I started tryharding, because some motherfucker out there would be like, wow, this guy is so bad, and then I'm like, fine, I'm gonna try hard and not pretend I'm bad for once. And they're like, wait, brother is here. Wait.
Pre-recorded gameplay. Hey.
Gameplay.
Head cam. Oh, that's so funny. Okay. Are there any other topics that you guys think you want to talk about before we wrap this up? Anything at all? I'll take
no. I'm good.
I think the recent Genshin characters, I think MiHoYo is on some like third level of like drugs. I don't understand, man.
I don't.
Genuinely, you cannot convince me that any character post 3.1 except Tainari and like maybe Sino, they thought of for more than like 5 minutes.
I feel like generalists, like really strong generalists like Bennett and Xingqiu, really bad for the game. They skew the whole the game's balance around them. But I don't have a problem with specialized units either. It's just I think that Nilou's restrictions might be a little too rough around the edges as of like the things I understand right now. I haven't been convinced yet that the vaporized stuff is like really worth using, or like, and specifically for Hyperbloom, we already know like you can use her if you want, but like it doesn't really change that much whether or not you're using her.
Oh, I wanted to quickly say that on the topic of Nilou's team restrictions and how like TCs and CCs are concerned that her best teams are going to be locked behind like limited 5 stars. I think it's a very valid concern, because with how the recent 4-star releases have been going, I'm not that confident that they will give her good 4-star teammates. That's
Are you telling me that you don't want to use Candace with her, but you can infuse her auto attacks? XF3, aren't you using Candace C6 with your Nilou, bro?
My Candace level 20.
Okay. I think this will wrap it up for... Wait, what number is this again? 18? 17? I don't know. It'll be in the title. Thank you, everyone, for watching us and catching up with us. If you want to see more of this type of content, please DM us. If you're a content creator or you're a viewer of someone and you think that they might be interested, just have them shoot me a DM on Twitter. I'm Artesians with 2 S's. If you like the wallpapers in the background, those are also on my Twitter. They're pinned. And it's been fun. if you'd like to see this content, tell us in the comments. Tell us who you'd like to see next. Tell us wherever you can. DM me on Discord. It helps us a lot with scheduling. So hopefully we'll catch KeqingMains next time and Azel next time. But it's been really fun. I've been Artesians. I am the head of Theorycrafting at KeqingMains, and today I was joined by Tenten. Say bye.
Bye.
Are you doing anything interesting, Tenten? You said you had a Nilou video coming out?
I'm playing Maple Story. I'm playing Overwatch. I'm so addicted to Overwatch right now.
You want to play after this?
I have to go for a raid in my Maple Story group.
Cringe. Okay, XF3, what are you doing? Anything interesting? Who are you? Where can people find you?
Twitter, XF3123. That's like the only social I use. Sometimes I post YouTube videos. Actually, I'll post one like this weekend. I'm gonna talk with Reins about stuff.
Nice.
I might do my own streams, same username for like Overwatch shit. I kind of played the game when Overwatch 1 came out.
Okay.
Probably do the same.
And then, of course, our featured guest, Sevy. Where can people find you? What's something interesting that's coming out with you pretty soon? Next video hints? Anything? A project that you're working on?
Yeah, I'm supposed to release my next video tonight. Tonight, as in like less than 12 hours from now. Just your morning tomorrow is gonna be on a certain electro unit, and then you can find me on Twitter at SevyPlays, on YouTube at SevyPlays. I'm also on Instagram at SevyPlays.
Nice.
Yes.
We'll try to get all of that linked in the description. Bye, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Bye. Thank you.